does make you wonder, in a different generation, different era without technology, would their business be able to survive the way it does now if they were desiring to be so isolated? And I used to think about that as introverted versus extroverted. My wife has reminded me many times. She is naturally an outgoing introvert, meaning that she enjoys being around people in very brief spurts.
Yep.
And it takes a lot of energy for her. And she's phenomenal in front of a crowd, and she actually gives lectures to thousands of people at times. But it takes everything she has.
Right.
Versus some of us that you can drop us off in the middle of the jungle. We'll make friends with the wombats or whatever else, right?
Koala bear and I will go for a walk.
Exactly.
We're good.
As I had a kindergarten teacher that once said, punishing young Dave is not acceptable because putting him in the wall makes the walls become his friends.
Oh, that's hilarious. But
you got to make friends somehow.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Inanimate objects don't make great friends, sir.
Figure it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for those of you guys that are joining us, we're here with Dave Altman from Bernstein, and he is in wealth management and has lots to say. How did you get here? Did you wake up at that wall at school and be like, I want to go into wealth management? What did that trip look like?
I knew two things extremely clearly when I graduated college. One was I would never work in finance, and two is I would never live in New York City.
I think you've broken both of those now.
Violently broken both of those. So what happened was I actually moved abroad. I had an opportunity. I was an athlete, so I had an opportunity to train with the Dutch and later the Spanish Olympic teams in track and field, and fell in love with life in Europe, and had an idea for a business when I lived in Spain. So I moved back to Spain post-college and fundraised and started a business. And it was a kind of Internet 1.0 startup, late 90s, early 2000s, and built a business from 3 other co-founders, one who kind of came and went, as co-founders can do,
they can.
And grew to about 36 people over a course of 3 years, and had a really thriving business. And then a pivot came.
Okay.
And that
pivot. Like a .com pivot? Did you get caught up in that?
So I saw what was happening out in California, being the bleeding edge of the .com bubble imploding. Mm-hmm. I was fortunate from college. I had a number of friends that went to New York and San Francisco, and many were involved in that space. So being in Spain, they barely still had internet,
right.
Dial-up, right? The business world, the world entrepreneur didn't exist in Spanish at that time. It was small or young business.
Right.
So I would try to educate people on what it meant. So, we were far behind in that regard, but I could see what was happening in other parts of the world without being a visionary, just being in touch with people. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't happy with what that looked like. And so we had a single family office that was the predominant investor into the business. And they had the largest seat on the cap table. And I went to the head of that family office and said, I think we need to fundamentally restructure what the business plan is. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, there's a lot that is changing, and we have to think about what that's going to mean here. It's going to reach, that wave is going to crest on our shores.
Yep.
Exactly right. And so what I said to him was, there's kind of one of two directions I think we should go, and this is my first rodeo, so you tell me what you think here. He was also a man that believed in the golden rules. He had the gold, so he made the rules.
Got it. That's a different kind of golden rule that I thought you were talking about.
Nope, not the religious, doing to others you haven't do it.
No,
not
what we're saying.
So I thought, let me help him to believe this was his idea. And I said, I think there's probably 2 directions we can go. One is we can actually raise some money now while the market is still attractive for it here. Mm-hmm. And we can go out and hire talent away from our competitors. He goes, why would I do that? He goes, our family has 45 or 50, I don't remember the exact number now, but plus or minus 4 dozen private company investments, and you're the only one that's making us money.
Oh, don't touch it. It's not broken.
I said, well, then we probably need to start laying people off. And he goes, you're making money. I said, right. But when the bubble bursts, and it will at some point in time, the labor laws in this country are different than where I come from. So maybe I've studied them a little bit more. But when someone gets laid off, they have 36 months of unemployment at 90% of their current salary.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, those weren't the words that I used to describe it, but yeah. I had to improve my Spanish vocabulary to
Yeah.
And so in doing so, he goes, so? I said, so what that means is if we want to hire top talent away from competitors, they're going to be sitting on the beach for 3 years before they come to work for us, because why would you go to work?
Right.
Right? And the flip side is if we have to lay people off, it's going to take us 3 years to get them off the payroll. So either we need to pare down quickly and start that process now, knowing the wave is going to hit us in 12 to 24 months, or we need to have a war chest so we can go and start poach that talent so we can own the market share. And he literally patted me on the head and said, oh, you young, silly American boy, you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's true. He goes, you make me money. Don't change a thing. And I wasn't really happy with that directionality. And he had enough control because I'd given it away in return for having money to fund the business. And at the same time, a French family office came to me through a connection of a connection, as things tend to happen, looking to meet local entrepreneurs because they were trying to expand their own investments. And I had the principals of that family office were in Madrid for a week, and we had lunch 2 times and then coffee one day. And I came to him with a list of companies that have you talked to these people, and these people, here's the businesses, and here's kind of the industry that they're in Spain and in Portugal, and happy to facilitate some introductions for you. People I've gotten to know over the years, they're always looking to raise money, probably be great. At the end of that last meeting, he said to me, well, instead of just introducing us to people and maybe us investing in your business, why don't you run this company for us in the Iberian Peninsula, and you'll go out and find these companies and you'll put money in to work with them. And I never thought of myself as a VC. Again, a term that...
As biz dev of a VC, that's not even...
Nope. I was running my company.
Right.
I didn't know any first thing about portfolio management. I didn't know anything about capital allocation and sizing. I didn't know enough about specifics of term sheets in Portugal versus in Spain versus they were in France. I didn't know any of that stuff. But it was a very lucrative offer relative at that point in time. I was a young guy. I didn't have children.
Yeah.
He was
You're I can figure this out. You had the ego of a younger person.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I still do, unfortunately, but.
Or fortunately.
Right.
Those people that take risks generally do.
I think that's a fair statement. And I looked at it and he said, I'll email you what I'm talking about. And he emailed me that night, and I looked through the term sheet, which was incredibly favorable to me. A very luxurious salary, all expenses were going to be covered, repayment of effectively equity that I had in the business on some level. We hadn't gotten to all the details, and then upside in the fund. And I had a 3-year guaranteed contract.
Wow.
Correct. And I didn't sleep. And I just sat there.
Oh, I think you would have slept easy. Sign the document.
I couldn't.
No?
I have pen and paper in front of me, and I literally sat down and wrote out a pro and con list. And the pro list was extremely long, and the con list was my conscience. And I just couldn't get over there was something that it was actually beyond that. Because I knew that my co-founders could take over some of the things that I was doing. There were certain things I was doing that no one else in the company was doing, which is, you think you're Superman, Superwoman when you start a company, but the reality is if it's a good company, it'll outlast you. Mm-hmm. Right? Bezos has kind of figured that one out, right?
Yep.
I'm not Bezos. And so I thought, okay, the company I can create a transition strategy. But my conscience kept bothering me that I had all the economic upside in this deal, and this family and their investors, if the investments went south, carried all the bag down.
Oh, well, yeah.
And that is in some ways how VC works.
Yep.
But in my 20s, I looked at it and went, I don't know, I think I was raised differently than this. Okay. And I wasn't comfortable with it. I wasn't comfortable with the fact that they were entrusting someone who I didn't know what I didn't know. And I thought I could be really successful with this, but if I'm not, I've ruined financial pictures for people that I don't even know that are invested in this family office structure. And that didn't sit right with me. And that to me, combined with the senior principal at the family office, that was our largest investor, saying, no, you make us money, don't change anything. those two things to me look like two strikes for the current economic environment. You had exuberance on one side and a desire to keep putting your head in the sand and not making any changes on the other, which I had read just enough financial history to know that that tends to be around bubbles for me. And I didn't know what the size and magnitude of this bubble was, but I didn't like it. And so there came a third strike after that, which was 9/11. And I lost my best friend on 9/11. And I said, this is getting to be a lot. And something that I do daily with clients today that I started then was, let me write down a prioritization mantra. What are the things that are most important to least important to me? And this ring on my finger is now a wife of 22 years. But at the time it was my girlfriend who I knew I wanted to marry, and she didn't speak Spanish. She lived in the States. I thought,
that's a sign.
That's a real sign there. She'll be happier. Her family would be happier. My family would be happier if I was back in the States. I think the business can carry on without me, and I don't feel comfortable about the opportunities that are coming my way. They're a little too easy, a little too much money for someone that doesn't have the experience. That doesn't sit right. And so I went back to my partners and said, I'm going to be leaving. And it was really hard. But they understood. 9/11 really reframed how people thought about things at the time. And I went back to that single family office that was our top of our cap table and said to them, here's a business plan. And then here's the other one that I don't think you should execute on. I think you should go raise money, and here's why. The other one is, here's what you're going to have to do if you pare the business down. He said, well, I told you we're not going to do this. I said, no, not we.
You.
Correct. I'm not going to be here. We have a deal. I'm able to tender my business at a discount and take my pesetas and go home, which is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to give you 3 months, going to give you 90 days of transition through the end of the year right after 9/11. But come the start of the year, I'll still be on as a consultant. If you'd like me, you don't need to pay me. I want to make sure the business is successful, but they need to move on and I need to figure out what's going to be next. And that process after that of, in many ways, doing things really right, I then really effed it up. I didn't know how to vet and qualify an accountant that could understand the taxation of moving across countries.
Oh.
I didn't understand how to vet and qualify a bank to handle the currency transaction. And lastly, a financial advisor to really give me fiduciary-based, true, trustworthy advice. And I got beaten badly on all three of them.
Oh, dear.
Oh, yeah. So much so that the bank I went to did a double currency transaction because they had to, going from pesetas to euros and from euros to dollars. And that cost me about a third of what I had in hidden markups.
Right.
And then the investment manager that I went to invested me in an undiversified single position in the NASDAQ Qs right before it imploded, and then refused to pick up a phone call, an email, fax, if you remember those.
Oh, that was a while ago, but yeah.
Exactly right. And saw my portfolio go down by nearly 80%. And I decided I'm never going to let this happen to me again. And then my accountant called me and said, hey, your taxes are due next week. Here's how much you owe. And I then called the financial advisor, and someone on the support staff said, yeah, you don't have that much in the account.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. I can laugh about it because there's lots of tears behind it. And I said, okay, this is definitely never going to happen to me or anyone I know again.
Okay.
And I didn't have a business to start, but I had an industry that I knew I had to know more about to protect my friends that were entrepreneurs that gave me the insight of this .com bubble that was imploding, a year or so earlier. And with that, I decided this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, is keeping entrepreneurs from making some of those same mistakes that I made and spending and dedicating my entire career to educating them to be more empowered to actually come out of a transaction having choices.
Right.
Being successful, not having the experience that I did.
You should not come out of a transaction owing money.
Yeah. I know that now, 25 years later. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So or 24, I guess, technically. So yeah, that's what promulgated me to come into the industry and how I started working directly with business owners going through that most important transaction in their life.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, that's great. And it's good that they have you.
Thanks.
It makes a difference.
I hope so.
The pre-planning component is kind of what we're here to talk about.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that you should not end your transaction owing money to the government. That's terrible. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. If that didn't happen, you and I probably wouldn't be sitting here. Right?
Well, that's probably true. Right? Because my own exit went badly, which is why which is why I'm here, because somebody should have told me, hey, don't do that. I'm not sure I would have listened. Right? Like, I don't know that I would have.
Right.
But somebody should have at least said it.
It would have been nice.
Yep. Yep.
And it would have also been nice if along the way, one of the professionals said, hey, I'm not the right person for this.
Right.
And that's something I do all the time. Prospective clients will come to me and say, hey, I need XYZ. I'm like, well, that's a different kind of surgery than I know how to do. Why don't we introduce you to people that can be helpful in that capacity? Because I don't ever want someone to feel like I did, which is to wake up the morning after and go, what just happened to me?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Spain's a different market, but I feel like you should have had a me over there too, helping you negotiate that.
Indeed.
Because probably somebody would have said something to you about, hey, have you checked the currency transfer?
Are you kidding me? When I was raising the capital, I could have used you in Touchstone.
Absolutely.
Because the terms of that deal would have been vastly different.
Correct. Yeah. Because it sounds like you had a set way to exit, and we wouldn't have let that happen.
No. Or allowing them to have complete control of the purse strings? No.
No. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well,
But again, it brought us
that's
together.
why we're here.
Exactly.
That's why we're here, is to try to help somebody else not do that.
Yeah.
Because that is easy to do in a capital raise, because it feels like that's what you have to do. And everybody saying it to you says, well, this is what you're going to have to do from anybody else.
Yeah. It's, I'm sure you've said this many times. I've had to explain to clients, there are 3 jobs that you're going to have. One is going to be running the business. 2 is going to be raising money. That's going to be a full-time job. And 3 is going to be exiting the business.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do 2 of them at the same time. Sometimes you're doing 3 of them at the same time. There's never enough time for all of them.
We don't generally advocate for somebody to raise money and exit at the same time.
You've seen it,
We've
though.
seen it, though.
Yeah.
We've seen it. We've done it. We don't like to.
Fair.
But sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah.
Well, so we are at kind of the middle of 2026, and this is the time where everybody's focused on option number 2, running their business. And it's not always where they should be focusing. Right. Like, as we're rapidly approaching kind of a year end, we see a lot of people go, I think I want to sell in 27.
Right.
Well, you should be talking to people in the summer of 26 to kind of make the exit work the way you want it to.
Right.
Both from a me planning and from a you planning.
Right.
So what is your role? If somebody comes to you in June and says, I want to exit in 27, what should they be doing?
Ooh, I think there's a couple of good analogies that might be helpful for some of your clients, some of your listeners and viewers to think about. You have children, I have children. Going to college today is very different than it was for us or for our parents. Back then, it was pretty easy.
Pickup truck.
Right? Exactly right. Off we go.
Yep.
I would like to attend said university or said college. I will fill out the form and I will go.
Right.
It was pretty simple. Today, it's a very structured process. If the application deadline is January 1st, you don't start that December 1st or October 1st. You probably, if you really want to have the best chance to find the right institution for your child, you probably want to start it the summer before, maybe even earlier in their junior year, just reading about the institutions, learning about it. Similarly, for preparing a business for sale, you want to start thinking through what are the internal and the external numbers. And I think about those 2 constructs a little bit differently. What I mean by the internal, the external is a place where you know really well. Do we have a good quality of earnings? Do we actually understand what is personal expense and what is true operating long-term expense? Do we have an understanding of the leadership structure in this business? Is an acquirer going to want to keep some, all, none of them on? Is there a family member that claims they work 30 hours a week and is really showing up 5 or 10?
Right.
Or they have a family member that's working 75, 80 hours a week that the business will not continue on without them. And
Right.
they need to be part of it. Those are numbers that are much like what's a GPA and what's an SAT or an ACT, that they're the headline numbers that the guidance counselor, which I think many ways is what a great investment banking partner like you and Touchstone really strive to do with clients. What we like to do is think about it from the inside, which is we're not going to be able to tell you what the comparable multiple is on your business versus Jim or Jane's down the road. That's not what our expertise is. Our expertise is actually helping you think about, in the college scenario, what are the softer things around the college we want? What's the size? What's the location? What's the major? What's the culture that we want? What's the fit and feel that you're going to have living through it for those years? Mm-hmm. When it comes to exiting a business, there's hopefully to use an overplayed expression, a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? There's a reason that you're doing all this, which is taking the intangible business value and making it tangible now in terms of cash or investments that you can then live off of. So the question is, what does this individual, this family actually need to be able to live on? And that's a factor of how old they are, how much do they save or spend, what are some of their dreams and priorities, and how comfortable are they with how they're allocating their money? And so what we'll do is we'll actually sit down and spend a lot of time up front, sometimes with couples, sometimes with different generations of family, sometimes with business partners, with actual tactile cards that have a concept on the card. And we ask them to prioritize those cards. Could be lifestyle, could be retirement, could be next phase, it could be impact, it could be education. And every person's going to have a different organizational structure and prioritizational hierarchy. And why we like doing that with people that are going through the transaction together, say it's a husband and wife that are selling a business. Well, maybe the husband's thinking, I really want to get out. I want to have a boat and I want to go spend days on a boat where there's no cell phone coverage and no one can find me so that I don't have to put out other people's fires. And maybe, and I'm playing very stereotypical roles because this is a reminder of a client that I went through this with earlier this year. The wife said, look, I've been running shoulder to shoulder with him. We built this business for 30 years. He wants to be on the boat. I never took my kids to school. I never saw a school play because I was working on the marketing. I was actually the one updating the spreadsheets. I want to be an involved grandmother now. And I want to be there next door if my kids will allow me, or if not, on a regular basis, picking the kids up from school, making them dinner. That's my priority. Well, those are different priorities. Very different.
Yep.
And they require different types of money and allocation to it. And so if we can start those conversations now in the summer of 26, they can come to understand, okay, what are our priorities? How do we construct an investment strategy? What are some of the tax saving strategies that can put in place to get us to a baseline sale value that we need, so they can come back to you and say, we don't know what the business is worth, but we have an idea of what we need.
Right.
And can you go out and find a way to get us that or more?
Yep.
And what are the strings attached to that?
Yep. Well, and when we look at evaluation, right, we do all the stuff. We look at all the internal stuff, all the guidance counselor stuff.
Right.
And we say, this is what your business is worth. And we say, is this enough? And the number of people that are like, oh, sure, or, oh, probably, or, I don't know, I haven't thought about it. I'm like, well, you should think that. Like, nobody wants to sell their business and go work at Walmart.
No, they don't.
Right? Like that is not their life objective. They want to have the options of the boat or the grandkids or the house in Florida or moving back to Spain or whatever their goals are.
Right.
They want to have those options. And it's really great that you bring those conversations about, quite honestly. We had an owner, nice big sale. 3 days before, we had negotiated his transition plan, where he had 3 months and he could be out because he was going to move to Florida.
Okay.
Great. He called me. He's like, it's off. I'm like, what's off? Like,
right.
Back up. What's off? He's like, well, I'm not going to sell. I'm like, okay, why?
Right.
Like, just why? And he's like, well, my wife says I'm not allowed to move to Florida.
Okay.
My grandkids are here.
Mhm.
My kids are here, and I'm not allowed to move to Florida. And I was like, so, okay. So what you're telling me is the 3 months is off.
Hmm.
Why would we still not get your cash flow out of the business?
Right.
And he's like, well, because I want to still work.
Ah.
And I was like, okay, do you want to still own or do you want to still work?
Hmm.
Because I can do one or the other. And he's like, you think I could get my money and still work? I'm like, I think you could get your money, still work, and get more money. And he was like, oh, do that then.
There you go.
So, but yeah, it's the conversations that don't take place.
Yep.
You know, and they're awkward conversations to have. Who wants to sit down with their parents who are still operating the business and be like, okay, did you make a will? Do you have an exit plan? Is your house paid off? Like,
Right.
have all the conversations. And when you add a business conversation to that too,
Mhm.
it's another wrinkle.
That's exactly right.
But it's an important conversation to have because, you know, we have sold companies where the owner passed away and now it's the wife going, not only am I dealing with grief, loss,
Yeah.
now I have a company
Right.
and people that have depended on us.
Right.
And I don't have the information.
And one other thing in there, if a business sale was happening, and in this case, the patriarch of the family passed away, how often do you see while they're going through the business sale process, they have to keep everything inside. They can't tell their employees that may have been their closest. They spent more time with them and their family over 10, 20, 30 years,
Correct.
and they've had to hide this from them. And those employees might not understand that and might have resentment now after the deal closes or after, in this case, the founder passes away. It's unbelievably difficult on surviving family members.
Yes. And it's unnecessary, right? Like, let's figure out a plan before.
Right. I actually have a family which multi-generational family, had 3 adult children all in the business. And like most, they're all in differing levels of the business. Mm-hmm. One was really operating the business. And there was in this case, it was a father who had founded it, grew it to be a very successful business in the tri-state New York City area, and hadn't gone through complicated estate planning before I met him. We were slowly getting into the position, but his solution was, why don't I sell the business to private equity and they'll keep one of my sons on to run the business, because he was doing that, and he will truly earn out his share over I think it was a 7-year earn out, and he would have materially more wealth than the others, but he was the one who was driving the business day in and day out. And mom and dad felt comfortable with that. Private equity fund loved it because he was a hard worker.
Of course.
And
he was already doing it.
He
they
was
didn't
really
have to
running
train anybody.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And then about 60 days before the deal was set to close, this son in his 40s had a heart attack and passed away. And so now private equity walked away, as you'd imagine. Adverse impact to the deal.
A little bit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now the parents are dealing with both the grief of that and trying to figure out how to run a business that they had already mentally moved on from and gone through all the process of getting ready to sell. And then less than a year later, they lost another child.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. And so now you've got a complete upheaval of what's happening inside the family and still having to operate a business. And so the grandfather, father in this case, was able to sell the business effectively to a competitor at a 60% discount to the original price because he needed out of the business. Right. We were able to come in and very quickly help him evaluate, do you have enough to be able to do the things that you want to do, which is, not just you and your wife sail off into the sunset, but truly take care of the next generation. And two, after what has happened, the answer was yes. We've been able to set aside, save enough, help them think that through. And he was able to execute on an extremely quick transaction because he had to get out from operating the business so that he could be there to support the rest of the family.
Function.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So sometimes understanding what you need isn't about maximizing the sale.
Right.
It can be about saving not the business, but your family.
Well, and quite honestly, maximizing a sale doesn't always refer to dollars and cents.
Yeah.
It can refer to lifestyle. It can refer to maintaining employees. It can.
Right.
We have one that it's referring to saving a town.
Oh,
Like
how
that's
so?
because if we sold to certain parties, it wouldn't.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah.
choices are being made to protect the town that they grew up in.
Love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny
So
you mentioned that.
There's always a value,
Yes.
but it's not always dollars and cents.
No, you're hitting it. And I was going to talk about philanthropy for a moment because that can be a big component to, in our country, we tend to think about it more from the tax saving side on a pre-transaction, but philanthropy isn't always about, donating to charity and getting a tax deduction. It can be about saving a community and having an impact. And that sounds like that was a real goal for this family.
Correct. Correct.
That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
But you need time to be able to think that through.
Exactly. And conversations.
Yeah.
Like you can't just, it doesn't happen like this.
No.
You have to find the right party that wants to do this. Well, everybody that has joined us, this has been Dave, and he has been a fabulous guest. If you would like to talk further with Dave, his information and contact is on the YouTube page, on Touchstone Talks website. And if you really can't find him, I'll help you.
Thank you very much, Deb. I appreciate that. This has been fantastic.
You're welcome. So last question.
Yes.
If you were not doing this or doing the other things you've already done, what else would you do as a career?
It's one that I actually do currently. So I volunteer on the side. I live here in Connecticut, and I volunteer at my children's high school to be one of the assistant track and field coaches.
Okay.
Because I did that growing up. I did it in middle school, high school, college. I mentioned earlier, I competed with a couple of Olympic teams. And I loved every minute of it. It is an individual sport in the midst of a team complex. And you have people at varying levels of physical engagement, of mental engagement, of kind of time management. And so I love doing that in the high school context because they're just old enough and smart enough to get some of the adult construct of the world, but they're also still immature enough that they think they know all the answers or they want you to tell them what to do. And so that push and pull in many ways is like an entrepreneur who is kind of still in the eager and hungry phase of their business. And so I love working with adolescents, and in track and field, I get a chance to instill some fatherly advice. Some of these kids really don't have much father figure. So I love doing that. And it's really fulfilling being outdoors and doing something that is mentally and physically engaging.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So if anyone is at any of the kind of state competitions, or I'm down in Fairfield County, and you want to wander over to the shot put, discus, javelin, we don't really have hammer throwing in the state, or you have kids that would love to learn more about it, I am always up for helping anybody.
I did not realize you were a throwing coach.
Yes.
Oh, I needed you 4 years ago.
Okay.
To be fair, my daughter needed you 4 years ago. I was not throwing 4 years ago. Excellent. Well, I will keep that in mind.
Okay.
And for those of you guys that have enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and follow Touchstone Talks to hear more great speakers.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Seb.
Thank you.